is the third in a series of tutorials aimed at assisting APS members with how to enter their photographs in international exhibitions. In this tutorial, I will cover what image files must be kept and how to resize an image file for Salon Entry. Regardless of what Salon section you enter, it is a requirement that you store the original camera file for every image you enter in international salons. This is ideally in RAW file format, but for those of you that shoot in JPEG, the original camera file is acceptable. FIAB rules state that you must also keep the original file either side of the image that you capture and enter. Such image files may be called upon by a salon organiser and possibly FIAB if a concern is reported to them. The Photographic Society of America may also ask for these files if the salon is also run with their approval and is a matter under investigation by them. The most common reason the files may be called upon is where an image entered in a salon's nature section or a section labelled traditional is under suspicion of being manipulated. Image manipulation in such sections is a breach of FIAB and Salon rules. Failure to respond or failure to respond promptly and provide the original RAW file or the original camera JPEG if shot in JPEG can result in an entrant being banned from Salon Entry for years. The original camera file provides proof of the original image captured. The files either side may also assist in validating what was in the scene photographed. There are also occasional instances of plagiarism. Ownership of an image may be called into question, including a situation where someone may have taken your image. Resolving such matters involves calling upon the original camera file, preferably in RAW format. The files for the image either side of this file also provide strong evidence of the photographer having been in that location. Anyone stealing a photo will almost certainly be unable to provide a sequence of RAW images from the scene in the stolen photo. So make sure that your file system always includes storage of the original camera files with the metadata of the file untouched, and please make sure you also back these files up. Salons will ask you to provide the image in a certain size for entry. If this is a print salon, some may ask for a particular size, or simply provide you with a maximum or minimum size. If an exact size is required, it will almost certainly be in order to fit in the frames used by the salon. But let's quickly run through the basic resizing of a file for a digital salon, as some people find this confusing, particularly when sizing horizontal images versus vertical images. I will demonstrate using a size that is commonly sought by salons, that being for a screen that is 1920 pixels wide by 1080 pixels high. When digital images are judged, this is done either via a projector or a screen. The shape of the screen or projection, regardless of exact proportions, is always a horizontal rectangle. The screen or projector will have an actual pixel count of pixels across the screen and pixels horizontal, that being horizontally, and there's also a pixel count vertically, which will be less due to the shorter dimension. A salon using a screen or projector of this resolution will generally then ask that the files entered are a maximum of 1920 wide and a maximum of 1080 high. The images you have are very likely not to be these exact proportions. When resizing an image, you have to ensure you don't exceed either dimension, and thus, unless you crop the image to exact pixel proportions, there will be a dimension that is less than the maximum. You can see here in a horizontal image with a panorama, you're likely to have less than 1080 pixels high. This is even more significant in a vertical image. The vertical height is still restricted to 1080 high, as this is the maximum height of the projection or screen, and thus vertical images will have a smaller file. Now let's have a quick look at how to resize a horizontal and a vertical image in Photoshop. Whenever you are resizing images for any purpose, always work with a copy of the file. So we're going to start by coming up the top here, click on Image, Duplicate. It'll automatically put the word copy after it, or you can rename it right there and then. Hit OK. And we're going to go back and close the original so that it's the copy that we've got in front of us. I'm then going to come up to Image, Image Size, and it brings up this panel. I can actually choose to resize this image according to a number of criteria. I could resize it by centimetres or inches, but for what we need for exhibition entry, it'll be pixels that we want. Always have resample ticked if we're resizing an image to a different set of pixel numbers, and always make sure this lock symbol is on. If you don't do that, it will only resize the particular dimension that you're working with, and it won't automatically resize the other one in proportion. As a result, you will get an image that is distorted. So always have the lock symbol on. So we're going to work to the same size as I talked about earlier, which is a file that's 1920 by a maximum of 1080 high. Now you can see that when we size this particular image to a maximum of 1920 wide, it is still too high. So we will have to work to the other dimension, which was 1080, which of course makes the width smaller, but we have to stay within the maximum for both dimensions. So that image is now correct. And I can go up and indeed save it to whatever file name and location I wish that to be. Coming across to a vertical image, the same applies. I will start by duplicating the image. I will close down the original. Image size. And if I just use the 1920, obviously being a vertical image, the vertical dimension is going to be much greater than the width. So without question, whenever I'm dealing with a vertical image, I'm always going to be working with the vertical dimension as my priority and have the width automatically set itself. In this instance, it'll come down to 800. I click OK, and that image is also now ready for entry, and I save it to whichever location I wish to put it in. I'm going to very briefly touch on just one more thing in relation to setting your image size. And for that, I'm just going to cross back over to the first picture that we worked on, that being the horizontal one. Every so often, a salon will ask for the resolution to be at a particular setting. More often than not, this is set to 300 pixels per inch, but sometimes it's 72. If you do need to reset this, either set this figure before setting your pixels, or if you've had to come back in afterwards, then just turn off the resample button and set this to 72. That won't, by turning off the resample, it won't influence the number of pixels. All it'll influence is how they're spread out, i.e. pixels per inch, and then hit OK. And lastly, when it does come to the point where you're saving your file, some salons will ask for a picture to be no larger in total megabytes than, say, 1 or 2 megabytes in size. So when I click on Save, I bring up this panel. This panel will come up here. You're always going to be saving in JPEG, incidentally. And if you turn on the Preview button, it'll actually tell you as a JPEG what size file this is ultimately going to be at a quality setting. Now, sometimes this might be larger than the size stipulated. In this case, it's 1 megabyte, and that will certainly be fine. But if that was, say, 2 megabytes and it needed to be 1, you can just reduce your file setting for the quality and bring it down to, say, 11, at which point this size is going to come down. Sometimes you may have to come down to 10, but generally not. And that's it.